Good morning and welcome back. If you're doing this tutorial, you are working on metal in year 11, and this is your little minor product that you're going to go through, make on the computer, and then make in real life. It's a little Kindling splitter and features a framework made out of 12mm mild steel rod, a blade made from a recycled leaf spring used because it's a high carbon steel, meaning you'll keep an edge a lot longer, and some 25 by 3mm angle line. In this tutorial, we're going to be going through and basically making up to making the top ring and the 4 little downrights. The reason why it's been constructed this way, I want you to run through learning how to bend curves and how to cut and shunt and re-weld and try and make close to a circle as possible. Rod was probably the nicest sort of looking process, I guess, and you get to do a few little fillet welds down there that I can give you some marking for. You'll do a bit of angle grinding or plasma cutting for the curve, and using the bench grinder to learn to put an edge onto a piece of metal. On the base, you'll be doing miter cuts using the cold saw and doing some welds that you're actually going to grind back so they look a bit invisible. So there'll be some welds left on there, and there'll be some welds that you're going to practice taking off without taking off your base metal. So what we actually need to do is start off with a new part. You can go to My Home at the bottom, but I'm aware some people have made that disappear, and so they can actually go to new and just use the drop down menu and click part. Sounds pretty good so far. Now we're going to go through and draw that circle there, and we actually need to go to sketch and select circle, and right now it's going to ask you what do you want to draw it on. It's quite important that you don't draw it on the base plane, actually draw it on the left or the right plane. Very important to do that. So I've selected that and it draws over onto one of those planes. We're going to draw that on this line, but just not starting in the center. You'll see why soon. So I'm going to make sure it locks on the X where it says 0.000. It actually locks on there when you get close. So click that, drag out the line, and I'm going to go through and dimension that to 12mm, 12, press enter. It'll probably go wandering on you. It's just zoomed out and it's just over there. Next thing, I'm going to dimension it from this line here at 100. And this will actually become our radius later on. One more thing you need to be able to revolve this is just a line that runs up this axis directly. So make sure it locks in at 0 degrees. And once you're done, finish the sketch. So you'll end up with a vertical line that is 100mm away from a circle. In the 3D model bar, we can actually go to revolve. We can click and it asks for a profile. So this is our profile. And then we want it to go and have an axis. And when you click those two, it'll spin itself around that axis and create that extrude. So that's our circle. The next thing we need to do is go through and make these 4 little uprights, which is as simple as drawing 4 circles and extruding them. You spend most of your time getting them in the right spot. So this is why it was so important to go through and get it on that line before, is we can't actually go through and sketch using this software onto a surface like that. So we have to go to origin and open up and find our plane. We want to find the XZ plane, which is the you call it the top of the bottom plane, and that's going to allow us to draw basically halfway through this material, drawing on that imaginary piece of paper. So I'm going to go through and draw 4 circles. 1, 2, 3, 4. Not worried too much about where they go, and I'm going to dimension one of them. I'm going to call that 12mm. They all sort of changed a bit in relativity because they just went, oh, well, if you made that one that big, you should think that we get all get a bit smaller. Now, a trick here is rather than dimensioning it all at 12mm, I can reference and click on the other dimension. It'll go D3, go tick, and it'll base its dimension off that one. Which also means if I decide to change this to 5, the other one will follow suit, which is quite handy if you're doing a design that you might change later. And so actually learning to get these driven dimensions that are driven off another one makes modifying your design later really easy. We're also going to dimension, we want this line here to be touching that line there, but the only way we can do that is to dimension it off of that center point. It's the only thing we can lock onto. And half of 12 is 6 millimeters, or so that we can keep that driven dimension, we can go 12 divided by 2. So I actually clicked that dimension, press the little forward slash, and then the 2. And that looks pretty right to go. So that's going to go through and lock it down. And so it's just touching that line. And I can go through and do the same thing for the rest of them. Now, important to know, clicked in the wrong point, we'll wait till it's yellow, is if I, sorry, my fault, try again, yellow line. If I drag down, it's going to give me the dimension horizontally. If I drag over here, it does it vertically. So depending on what you actually want to dimension is where you drag it out to. Kind of important. So I want that one, I want it to be the same as that. Wait for it to go yellow, wait for it to go yellow. There we go. Dimension off of that one. And last one. There probably is an even shorter way to make them all the same. I'm not aware of that one yet. When I am, I'll let you know. Last thing is to mention how far out horizontally. That magical number is 100. And that's going to go through, and it's still there. It's just floating in the middle of that material. So it's just hiding away, and you can always see it if you hover over that way. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did before. And I did the silly thing of taking my 100 out too far. I have to zoom out. Dimension off that. Waiting for yellow. Go. 100. Tick. Yellow. Yellow. 100. Tick. So I've got my 4 there. I know they're all dimensioned because they're not green anymore. They're blue, which means they're locked in place. I can finish that sketch. Use my 3D model extrude tool, and I can go through and select those 4 circles. It's just if I zoom in and hover until you see them just glow a little bit. You can't really click in the wrong spot. You can just click around randomly if you want until you find it. Yep, that's all 4 of them. Yep. I want them to go down. Now I can see on my little box here that top is still upright. You couldn't have spun yourself around during that whole process. Top's there, so I actually want to go the opposite direction, which means I use this tool here. Now some of you actually have this happen and you've got some other little floating bar around. The extrude tool is usually sitting here. You can click the arrow there to get that to appear down if you got it lost. And I want to go down 300 millimeters. Press enter. And there I have that basic tube frame. Looks pretty good so far. Yeah, I'm just going to press save to that now. It's always good saving quite regularly. And I'm going to call this Kindling splitter. Press save. Save. I'll leave it there.